The streets of Atlanta are on fire right now because the moment that court ruling hit the internet, everything people thought they knew about Kirk Frost and Rasheeda's 25-year marriage collapsed in real time. Cameras flashed, reporters swarmed, fans gasped, and Kirk walked out of that courtroom looking like a man who had just watched his entire empire slip straight through his fingers. Because according to the judge's final decision, Rasheeda isn't just done with him emotionally. She just won a staggering $300 million spousal support package that has officially left Kirk broke, defeated, and publicly humiliated. Gone are the days of money flexes, studio bragging, and boss talk. Kirk Frost walked out with empty pockets, a shaky future, and a reputation that may never recover. And the wildest part? Rasheeda didn't even crack a smile. She simply stepped into her black SUV like a woman who had survived the storm, rebuilt her peace, and finally took back everything Kirk ever tried to strip from her: dignity, trust, security, stability. Fans were screaming, "She deserved this," while others were stunned that the same man who once bragged about controlling all the finances ended up losing it all with one judge's signature. And now, the biggest question is shaking the entire love and hip-hop universe. What really pushed Rasheeda to take everything? Because insiders are saying this wasn't about the Jasmine drama anymore, or the side babies, or the decades of cheating. This was something deeper, darker, and far more humiliating, something that Rasheeda kept quiet until the very moment she filed those 300 mailer papers, and the second the truth leaked, girl, the whole internet realized this wasn't just a divorce, this was payback, and Rasheeda made sure Kirk felt every dollar of it. Long before Rasheeda walked into that courtroom, like a woman reborn, long before Kirk Frost's bank accounts froze and his entire lifestyle crumbled before his eyes, their marriage had already been bleeding truth for decades. Slow, quiet, brutal wounds that never healed. People online love to joke, Rasheeda stayed too long, but they will never understand the emotional warfare she survived behind closed doors, while cameras caught only crumbs of the chaos. When Kirk first entered her life, he wasn't the villain the world knows now. He was charming, supportive, the man who hyped her dreams and told her she would be a star. He positioned himself as her protector, her partner, her business backbone. And Rasheeda, young and hopeful, believed him. She trusted him. She let him manage her finances, her music career, her direction. What she didn't realize was that Kirk wasn't building a partnership. He was building control. The first cracks appeared early: arguments over money, silent treatments when she questioned decisions, guilt trips when she wanted independence. But Rasheeda pushed through, thinking it was just marriage stuff. It wasn't. It was manipulation wearing a smile. The cheating didn't start years into the marriage. It started early, subtle at first, then blatant, then reckless. Rasheeda found strange messages, questionable receipts, and unexplained disappearances, but every time she confronted him, Kirk flipped the script. He cried, he lied, he gaslit. He told her she was insecure, jealous, dramatic, imagining things. Over time, she stopped trusting her own instincts, and that was his power. By the time Love and Hip Hop cameras rolled in, Rasheeda was already living in a silent storm, and what the world saw on TV was only 10% of the real betrayal. The Jasmine storyline? That wasn't Kirk's first rodeo. It was just the first time the world caught him. When Jasmine stepped into the picture, Rasheeda wasn't shocked because she had been living in suspicion for years. What broke her was not the cheating, but the disrespect. Kirk lied to Jasmine's face. He lied to Rasheeda's face. He lied to Carly's face. He lied to America's face. He denied his own child until he couldn't deny it anymore. He humiliated Rasheeda on national TV, made her swallow her pain while millions watched. But that wasn't even the worst part. The real heartbreak was when Rasheeda realized Kirk wasn't sorry. He was sorry he got caught, and the moment she forgave him, he weaponized her forgiveness. He acted like her grace meant she would always stay. And so he kept cheating, kept lying, kept double living. The public only saw a handful of women. The truth? There were more. Women Rasheeda never named. Women he paid off to stay quiet. Women he promised things he never delivered. Women he treated better than his own wife at times. And once Rasheeda became a businesswoman in her own right, Frost Bistro, Pressed ATL, endorsement deals, brand partnerships, Kirk saw her evolving into someone who didn't need him. This threatened him, so he clung tighter to control, controlling money, controlling appearances, controlling narratives. Even when they smiled on camera, the house was cold, silent, heavy. Conversations were transactional. Respect was dead. And Rasheeda, who once believed loyalty could fix anything, realized loyalty was the very thing killing her spirit. The turning point? The moment Rasheeda emotionally detached wasn't Jasmine or the DNA test or the strip club nights. It was the day she overheard Kirk telling a friend, "Rasheeda ain't going nowhere. She's too invested, too scared to start over." That sentence broke her more than any affair, because for the first time in 25 years, she heard how small he truly thought she was. But Rasheeda didn't explode. She didn't confront him. She didn't threaten divorce. Instead, she got quiet, observant, strategic. She started documenting things, saving receipts, tracking money, watching patterns. The same way Kirk studied her weaknesses, she started studying his. And that's when she discovered the truth that would later become the heart of her $300 million claim. Kirk Frost had been siphoning money behind her back, using marital funds for secret apartments, private trips, and women he thought she would never find out about. He had been draining joint accounts and hiding assets under fake LLCs. Rasheeda didn't leave then. She played it cool. She waited. She built her empire silently, preparing for the day she would finally walk away. And the moment she realized she could stand alone financially, emotionally, and spiritually, that was the moment Kirk's fate was sealed. He just didn't know it yet. When Rasheeda finally walked into that attorney's office, she wasn't the hurt wife trying to save her marriage anymore. She was a woman on a mission, a wife-turned-strategist who had spent years quietly gathering every receipt, every bank statement, every signature, every whispered rumor, and every hidden asset Kirk assumed she would never find. And the moment her legal team spread everything across that mahogany table, even they had to sit back for a second. It wasn't just cheating. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just Jasmine or the endless parade of women Kirk cycled in and out of his double life. This was financial infidelity, emotional warfare, and marital fraud stacked so high that Rasheeda's lawyers told her point blank, "You're entitled to a number far higher than you think." And that's when the magic number, 300 million, was born. Not out of greed, but out of damages, out of 25 years of lies, out of the empire Rasheeda helped build, only for Kirk to siphon pieces of it away, like a leaky pipe she never saw dripping. What Kirk didn't know was that Rasheeda had been quietly building her own empire. Separate accounts, new LLCs, personal trademarks, investments under her maiden name, preparing for the day she would no longer have to ask him for approval, for access, or for permission to breathe. But the first real shock came when Rasheeda's attorneys uncovered something bigger than side babies, scandal, or strip club confessions. They found a hidden property, a luxury condo in Buckhead that Kirk had been paying for through a ghost LLC, a condo he claimed was for studio storage. But security logs showed the truth. Women had been coming in and out for years. The name on the lease wasn't Kirk's. Of course, it was a fake company, but the signature, the sloppy handwriting that matched Kirk's on old Frost Bistro invoices, that was the smoking gun, and that alone was enough for Rasheeda to file for marital asset misappropriation, a legal move that instantly put Kirk on the defensive. When Kirk got the papers, served to him during a Frost Bistro brunch event, in front of influencers, fans, and half of Atlanta, he looked like someone had ripped the ground from beneath him. He tried to laugh it off. He tried to play it cool. He even tried to tell people Rasheeda was being dramatic. But once the blogs picked up the story, Kirk panicked because he knew Rasheeda wasn't dramatic. She was dangerous when she was calm, and she had been calm for months. Behind the scenes, he started calling her nonstop, begging to talk, promising he would fix everything. But Rasheeda didn't budge. She had turned into stone. Her lawyers advised her not to speak to him directly, and she obeyed. But what Kirk really feared was what he heard from a little birdie. Rasheeda wasn't just filing for divorce. She was filing for restitution, a legal clause that allowed her to dig into every account Kirk touched over the last 25 years. That meant every secret cash withdrawal, every hidden apartment, every late-night hotel charge, every massage receipt, every strip club payment, every secret business deal he tried to funnel away from her. But the moment that flipped the entire case on its head came from someone neither Rasheeda nor Kirk expected: Jasmine herself. Yep, the Jasmine who shook the entire Love and Hip Hop franchise. The same woman whose baby Kirk denied, lied about, dismissed, disrespected, and then reluctantly acknowledged. Jasmine reached out to Rasheeda privately, offering something explosive: proof Kirk had been paying her under the table, using business accounts, not personal ones, to cover child support, rent, and lifestyle expenses. That meant fraud. That meant tax evasion. That meant business misuse of funds. And Rasheeda's attorneys nearly fell out of their chairs when Jasmine provided bank routing numbers. Kirk had been using their joint business account, the one tied to Pressed ATL, to pay Jasmine for years. Rasheeda didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't break. She simply said, "Add it to the complaint." That's when Kirk realized he wasn't just dealing with a divorce. He was dealing with a financial audit that could leave him penniless, reputation shattered, business frozen, and possibly facing federal penalties. But the biggest twist, the one that would later justify Rasheeda's entire $300 request, came when her legal team uncovered a second secret apartment. This one wasn't in Buckhead. It was in Miami, paid in cash, furnished, lived in, and leased under the name of a woman Kirk insisted he barely knew. A woman who gave birth to a child 3 years ago who, according to anonymous sources, looked disturbingly identical to Kirk. That was the twist Rasheeda held close to her chest, refusing to leak it, refusing to expose the child, refusing to play dirty. But her lawyers didn't ignore it. They contacted the woman, and she confirmed everything. When the mother submitted a handwritten statement admitting Kirk had been financially supporting her, outside of Rasheeda's knowledge, for years, the attorneys knew they had enough ammunition to legally bankrupt him. When Rasheeda saw the statement, she simply nodded. No tears, no rage, just resolve. And when Kirk learned Rasheeda knew about his Miami child, before he even had a chance to spin it, he spiraled, calling everyone, denying everything, begging Rasheeda not to ruin him. But Rasheeda wasn't ruining him. Kirk ruined himself. Rasheeda was just finally cashing the check. Kirk Frost had always believed he could talk his way out of anything. Out of scandals, out of cheating rumors, out of lies, out of Jasmine's pregnancy, out of the public humiliation he dragged Rasheeda through for years. So when that lawsuit hit him like a brick to the chest, Kirk immediately launched into panic mode, wrapped in denial. He hired a flashy attorney, someone known for representing Atlanta's biggest cheaters, and started telling anyone who would listen that Rasheeda was overreacting and trying to get revenge because of Jasmine. He tried to spin the narrative, tried to make Rasheeda look emotional instead of strategic, tried to act like the $300 amount was some wild exaggeration she would never actually win. What Kirk didn't realize, what he never understood about Rasheeda, was that she didn't make moves until every detail was airtight. So while Kirk was posting inspirational quotes on Instagram, pretending nothing was happening, Rasheeda's legal team was meticulously reconstructing every financial move he had made since the early 2000s. And that's when the real explosion hit. Because Kirk wasn't just hiding apartments and women, he was hiding business deals. Deals that involved money Rasheeda earned but never saw. Deals she never approved. Deals that legally belonged to their marital estate. The biggest shock landed when Rasheeda's lawyers uncovered a silent partnership Kirk had been involved in for 7 years, a distribution deal tied to one of Atlanta's major nightlife promoters. Kirk had invested Rasheeda's money, without her consent, into a chain of clubs, lounges, and pop-up events. And here's the part that made Rasheeda's attorneys slam their folders shut in disbelief. The agreement was structured so that all profits went to a separate account that only Kirk could access. He didn't just cheat emotionally. He cheated financially. He cheated professionally. He cheated in ways Rasheeda hadn't even imagined. And the moment this came out in mediation, Kirk's calm facade shattered. He slammed his hand on the table. He shouted about privacy and marriage and, "You weren't supposed to go through my accounts." Rasheeda didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She simply slid a stack of printed bank statements across the table and said, "You spent my money on your girlfriends. Now you're going to spend your money paying me back." That's when Kirk realized she wasn't bluffing. She wasn't negotiating. She wasn't in her feelings. She was done. But Kirk, desperate and spiraling, tried one last tactic. He demanded a forensic audit of Rasheeda's business accounts, hoping to accuse her of hiding money too. He thought he could catch her slipping. He thought he could flip the narrative. He thought he could finally regain control. Except that was the worst move he could have made. Because the audit revealed something Kirk never expected. Rasheeda's businesses weren't struggling. They were thriving. Pressed ATL wasn't just successful, it was pulling in millions. Frost Bistro was expanding. Rasheeda's endorsements were lucrative. Her streaming numbers were up. Her brand was exploding. And thanks to Georgia marital law, the moment Kirk demanded the audit, his share of Rasheeda's money became subject to the settlement too. Rasheeda smiled for the first time in months. Kirk realized he had just helped her increase the payout. But the twist that truly destroyed him, the one that made his attorney drop his pen and whisper, "We're in trouble," came from Rasheeda's quiet, calm, almost terrifying ability to follow paper trails, because she had uncovered a trust fund, a fund Kirk had secretly created for one of his side families. Not Jasmine, not the Miami situation. This was a third woman, a woman Kirk had been involved with years ago, a woman he secretly paid for relocation, childcare, and housing using marital funds, siphoned through a corporation Rasheeda never even knew existed. And when the attorneys confronted Kirk with the trust documents, he went pale, almost green, because not only did the trust prove years of hidden support, it proved premeditated deception, the kind that courts do not forgive. The judge froze the trust immediately. Kirk's lawyer begged for a recess. Rasheeda didn't move. She just sat there with her legs crossed, her expression unreadable, every ounce of pain she ever endured replaced with pure, quiet power. But it wasn't the discovery of the trust that broke Kirk psychologically. It was what came next. Rasheeda's lawyer slid one final folder across the table. A paternity test Kirk didn't know Rasheeda had requested. Not for Jasmine's child, not for the Miami child, for a child whose mother had remained anonymous. Until that moment. The results? 99.98% probability. Kirk had a third secret child, and Rasheeda knew. Kirk broke down in the conference room, hands on his face, breathing ragged, looking like the world had just caved in, because for the first time in 25 years, he realized Rasheeda wasn't bluffing. She had everything, and she was finally ready to use it. The moment news broke that Kirk Frost had a third secret child, Atlanta's entire entertainment scene erupted like a volcanic explosion. Blogs went into overdrive, gossip sites crashed from traffic, and even people who hadn't watched Love and Hip Hop in years came crawling out the woodwork screaming, "A third!" TMZ ran the headline in bold red letters. The Shade Room posted it with a side-eye emoji. Lipstick Alley was on fire. And by sundown, Kirk Frost's name was trending nationwide like he had committed a federal crime. But the real damage came when the court documents leaked. Suddenly, the world wasn't just talking. They were reading, and what they read made Kirk look worse than he ever looked on reality TV. People finally saw the hidden apartment receipts, the trust fund paperwork, the side business transactions, the secretly funded vacations, the private child care deposits, the paternity test results, and worst of all, the breakdown of Rasheeda's entire financial contribution over 25 years. The public saw it all. They saw that Rasheeda had carried the marriage, the businesses, the brand, the home, the children, and the emotional weight, while Kirk siphoned money into a life she never knew existed. Fans rallied behind her instantly. Pay her what she's owed. $300 million isn't even enough. Rasheeda deserves restitution for emotional damages alone. Meanwhile, Kirk's world was crumbling faster than he could blink. Endorsements dropped him. Investors froze him out. Frost Bistro saw a wave of cancellations. A major streaming service paused a business partnership he bragged about just months ago. And as his public image drowned, Kirk tried to stop the bleeding, releasing a messy, half-baked Instagram video claiming the blogs got it wrong and his marriage was still worth fighting for. But fans roasted him so badly, he deleted it within minutes. But the worst meltdown happened when the judge officially froze all of Kirk's accounts, including the ones he thought were untraceable. His accountant couldn't help him. His lawyer couldn't save him. His side families couldn't defend him. Kirk was broke. Not the influencer broke, but legally, publicly, humiliatingly broke. And right when he thought things couldn't get worse, Rasheeda delivered the second blow that sent him spiritually into the dirt. She filed a motion requesting majority ownership of all joint businesses, including Frost Bistro and Pressed ATL, arguing that Kirk not only mismanaged funds, but jeopardized her entire brand with his infidelity and financial misconduct. The court didn't hesitate. They sided with her. Overnight, Rasheeda went from co-owner to majority owner, and Kirk went from boss to employee of the very empire he once controlled. The image of Kirk leaving the courthouse after that ruling became an instant meme. Head down, shoulders heavy, looking like a man who had just watched his last lifeline get yanked out of his hand. Bloggers captioned it, "When cheating stops being cute." Others said, "This is what happens when karma compounds with interest." But the most iconic moment came when Rasheeda was approached by paparazzi outside Pressed ATL. She didn't gloat. She didn't brag. She simply said, "I'm choosing peace. Everything else is in God's hands." The internet lost it. That was the final nail. That was the quiet flex of a woman who had survived hell and walked out shining. Meanwhile, Kirk's friends started distancing themselves. His DMs were leaking daily, and one of his closest industry associates publicly said, Kirk got too comfortable thinking Rasheeda would never leave. Now he's realizing she was the prize the whole time. It was brutal. It was deserved. And the fallout hadn't even peaked yet, because Rasheeda had one more card left to play. And when it dropped, Kirk's entire legacy would collapse. Just when Kirk thought the worst was finally over, just when he convinced himself that losing the money, losing the businesses, and losing Rasheeda's trust was rock bottom, Rasheeda walked back into court with a calmness so unnerving it made even her own lawyer sit straighter. Because she wasn't done. She still had one more bomb, one more confidential file, one more secret Kirk never knew she found. And it was the one thing he valued more than money, more than pride, more than the illusion of power he clung to for 25 years. It was his publishing rights, his music catalog, the last piece of his identity, the single thing he thought Rasheeda would never dare touch. But Rasheeda had receipts, decades-old contracts showing that while Kirk pretended to manage her career, he quietly signed parts of her publishing under his name. And the judge didn't like that, not one bit. Rasheeda argued that Kirk used her youth, trust, and inexperience to manipulate her into signing deals she never fully understood, deals that locked her intellectual property under his control, deals he leveraged financially for years, even while humiliating her publicly with other women. And the moment Rasheeda's lawyers presented those papers, the entire courtroom went silent. Kirk's attorney froze. Kirk's face fell. Because he knew. He knew damn well he had done it. He knew he had trapped Rasheeda in contracts she didn't deserve. But he never imagined she'd find proof. And he never imagined she'd challenge it. But Rasheeda looked him dead in the eyes, calm, steady, done, as her attorney requested full reversion of all publishing rights associated with Rasheeda's music, including anything Kirk attached his name to. The judge reviewed the documents, glanced at Kirk, and said the words that shattered him. These contracts are predatory. Mrs. Frost is entitled to full recovery. The courtroom gasped. Kirk's jaw dropped. That was it. His money was gone. His businesses were gone. His reputation was gone. And now, even his music, gone. Reporters outside couldn't believe it. Comment sections exploded. She took everything. The real queen of Atlanta. Rasheeda said clean sweep. Meanwhile, Kirk stumbled down the courthouse steps like a man who finally understood consequences. He had nothing left to hide behind. But Rasheeda wasn't doing this out of spite. She was doing it out of survival. Because after court adjourned, her lawyer quietly slid her one last envelope. Something they had only confirmed that morning. Something they hadn't shared with Kirk yet. Something that would destroy the last illusion he had left. Fatherhood. Inside the envelope was a final DNA result. Not for Jasmine's son. Not for the Miami child. Not for the third child they had already exposed. This was for a fourth child. A child whose mother swore Kirk convinced her to keep quiet to protect his marriage. A child whose birth certificate listed no father. A child who looked exactly like Kirk. Rasheeda stared at the document, her face unreadable. Then she whispered something that made even her lawyer pause. I'm not giving him this one. Not yet. Because Rasheeda understood something Kirk didn't. Timing is everything. If she revealed this now, it would look like vengeance. But if she revealed it later, when Kirk tried to rebuild, tried to find sympathy, tried to crawl back into the spotlight, it would be the final nail in his legacy. So Rasheeda tucked the envelope into her purse, stepped into her car, and left the courthouse with the peace of a woman who knew she held the ultimate card. Meanwhile, Kirk sat in his SUV crying, broken, whispering, "Why would she do this?" But Rasheeda didn't do this to him. He did it to himself. And the cliffhanger? The streets are whispering that Rasheeda's next move isn't financial, it's emotional. And when she reveals the truth about the fourth child, Kirk Frost's name might never recover. And now that every dollar, every business, every secret apartment, every hidden child, and every piece of Kirk Frost's image has crumbled into dust, Rasheeda is standing taller than she ever has in the entire 25-year roller coaster of chaos we've watched unfold. But the wildest part is, this story is still not over. Because Rasheeda may have walked out of that courthouse victorious, calm, collected, and fully in control, but she is still holding on to that final envelope, the one with the DNA results for the fourth child Kirk never knew she knew about. And the second she decides to expose it, baby, Atlanta will shake again. Fans are already buzzing. The blogs are preparing their drafts. And insiders are whispering that Rasheeda's next move won't just destroy what's left of Kirk's reputation. It might end his entire presence in the industry altogether. But before she plays that card, before she drops that truth bomb on the world, before she forces Kirk to face a reality he can't manipulate, she's taking her time, protecting her peace, and letting the world see who she becomes without him dragging her down. So now the question isn't, will Rasheeda release the fourth DNA test? The real question is when. And trust me, when that day comes, social media will melt. So drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me how you feel about Rasheeda taking everything she earned. Hit that like button if you've been screaming at this saga. Subscribe if you're ready for the next explosive chapter. And share this video with someone who needs to know the real tea. Because this divorce, this downfall, this 300 minute takedown,